Hello, students. As we have discussed in our earlier lecture, the Romanticism continued to exert influence on the contemporary Romantic writers and theorists. We have seen P.B. Shelley as a new ideologist. He proposed the, the work of imagination and the work of science, as well as he compared and contrasted the form of human life, the mixture of idealism and hope. He is optimistic in his approach and he believed that the future is optimistic. In his Ode to the West Wind, we have very good lines of P.B. Shelley. So, the despair, faith, and skepticism, doubt, and despair, he contrasted with each other and proposed the brighter vision for the future. John Keats was another significant writer of the Romantic era. Like Lord Byron, he was also influenced by the optimism of the earlier writers. The urge to freedom from all bondage of human life, love for nature, and the importance of emotions and imagination in the poetic creation are the source of his poetry theory. His poetry is famed for his passionate description of beauty and its sensuousness. His odes are the best example of Keats's sensual writing. His latest to his reign, to his acquaintances, we have seen his theory, negative capability, how the negative capability is there, and how the poet, under its influence, cannot be called as a great poet. If the poet is in, suppose, skepticism or doubt, he produces just a significant, or say he just produces a trivial or superficial work of art. The share of his object is attempting to describe. In order to create a faithful description, the task of the poet, according to him, is to transmit the beauty, the perfection in anything, and the permanence of work of art are his defined views on the nature and function of poetry. As we have seen, the salient features of Romanticism that have occurred in the theorists and their theories, respective theories. Romanticism, as we have seen, is a reaction against neoclassicism, and he, Romantics, strongly criticize the neoclassicist vision of human life. The Romantics, on the other hand, favored sentimental and individual descriptions of human life. So, apart from this philosophical difference, the Romantics broke away from the neoclassical rules of literary style and subject matter. Their writing was marked for its passionate appeal, deep longing, and intense feeling. Their style was characterized by a reference for boldness over restraint, suggestiveness over clarity, and freedom of rules. Nature always driven the Romantics and brought under the influence. Romantics regarded it as a living, liberating force as opposed to utilitarian, rationalist view of nature. It was through nature they tried to establish the communion with the entire world. And the forms and different forms are offered a long, say, range of a whole range of human experience, pleasure and pain. Imagination is another feature. This is a change from mimetic theory of art to the expressive theory. The Romantics thought the imagination as a dynamic one and unifying faculty. It helped them to create reality and both unite the reason and feeling. Another feature that we see is individualism. Is another important feature of Romanticism. Romantics didn't follow the already established views and conventions, rules of composition of a literary work of art. They were democratic in their approach. They valued human life. They valued each and every opinion, authority, and experience. They were democratic in their approach and regarded individual freedom and thought highly. The Romantics disliked the unpleasant and mechanical as well as the city life, urban life, and preferred the simple life of the countryside. They believed that literature is for the common man and it should reflect the language of the common man. So, the philosophy of Romanticism valued the common speech in their poetry, in their theory. So, as a literary critical movement, Romanticism is based on the French Revolution and its democratic principles. The German version of Romanticism was largely philosophical and religious in nature. It was, as we have seen, developed and influenced by Immanuel Kant. Another German romanticist also contributed, like August Schlegel, von Schiller, Friedrich Schelling, and as we have seen, we have Chateaubriand and Victor Hugo in French Romanticism. English Romanticism was driven by the early Romanticists and later Romanticists, but they continued to exert a kind of influence on the writers of the Romanticism. And like this, the Romantic principles and thoughts continued to exert tremendous influence not just in Romantic era but also the later following Victorian era in English literature. We have studied the work, the philosophy of the Romanticism have tremendously influenced not just the Romanticist or Romantic poets but also the frontiers in like America, the frontiers in the world literature, and they continued to exert the influence that is even felt in the modern age too. So, Romanticism is also one of the feature of the Romantic era. Modernism is also a feature of the Victorian preceding Victorian era, but it is cast in the different perspective. It is cast in a different arena of virtues, and that virtues is some religious concepts, some imaginative, some spiritual concepts of the Romanticism, and these romanticist views were very much approached from the universalizing principles, democratic principles, and that is what Romanticism continued to exert and held dear by so many following poets and essayists as well as theorists. So, like this, we have studied the short term But we have studied this term in a continuous way, and we have gone through in this three series of lectures. Definitely, it is not too much expected. We have certainly gone through various avenues of the Romanticism, but as a student, we should know. So, the names of the theorists that I have just uh, mentioned in my video lecture, you have to go through a little bit of their respective theories. Suppose, like William Wordsworth's preface, or S.T. Coleridge's Biographia Literaria, or uh, John Keats's Letters, or P.B. Shelley's Defense of Poetry against the charges leveled by Thomas Love Peacock. So we have to go through the respective theory, or in what some summary type of views, so that we can understand this romanticism in much more detail, and we can have the function as nature and function of poetry through a romantic perspective, and we can as a student get trained, and then we will be able to categorize the respective literature or respective poetry in the whenever you come across a new type of reading. So like this, all these are very important features that you should look into. So here we conclude. See you again in the next lecture.